there, this is Dave Wood again, and I've got a video that's been recommended by the staff to do another video review. People have asked for this, so I'm going to hit the play button now.
Amazon CEO Andy Jassy says artificial intelligence will lead to a reduction of its corporate workforce eventually over the next few years. He wrote in a memo to employees that they should figure out, in his words, how to get more done with scrappier teams. That's nice. Joining us now, former Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang. It's a daunting future we have, Mr. Yang, obviously, and you've been. I said I was at was it a book party that I attended for you?
A book event.
6 years ago.
I mean, AI is in the news, and everybody's talking about it. And the reason is there's just a general sentiment that we all have that AI is very quickly going to replace a lot of human work, and it hasn't really so much yet. It's starting to. The reason it hasn't yet, though, is because really AI is not nearly as complex as a human brain, one human being is yet. It has access to all information, very good at writing and things like this, but it makes very big mistakes, and everything has to be checked on. And so now we're going to watch this, and I'm going to give my thoughts on AI in this video. So
talking about this on the horizon and the need for maybe even back then universal basic income. I guess at this point you're thinking, wow, it's accelerating faster than you even thought.
Yeah, it's here even faster than I'd imagined back in 2019 and 2020. And I talked to CEOs who are replacing thousands of customer service workers with AI, entire design departments, even coders are being supplanted. And Becky and I were just talking about how we used to tell our kids, hey, if you major in...
So universal basic income is like a concept that people have had for a long time. And really, I mean, if things could go in a direction that could be good and could be bad, it could be towards universal basic income, because the reality is that I'm not sure that would be good for us. But also, in addition to that, we might be forced to do something like that, because if a third of the workforce gets replaced in a single year or something like that with AI, which is possible to happen in a 12-month period of time once AI hits a certain threshold, people are going to need to live, and they're going to need income. And the tech companies are going to be making a lot of money. And so one way that people have thought of solving this income disparity that is going to be essentially created is universal basic income. Although I'm not really sure that this is going to work, but we're going to keep watching the video. And so he says a lot of companies are laying off workers and things like this, and that is happening. But my point is we're not at a point yet where we're replacing, for example, 20% of the jobs in like a single year. But let's see what he's got to say.
Computer science, you'll be good to go. And now those graduates are having a hard time finding jobs. It's starting to appear in the numbers for recent college graduates and entry-level white-collar work.
If you're a science fiction believer, I was going to ask you whether the whole Luddite chorus that we've heard for 150 years, that it's never actually it's always been better technology long term. Maybe not always, but many times even more jobs are created from the technologies that being replaced, whether it's internal combustion engines or whatever you want to look at. You would argue this time is different with AI, and then it's not. I mean, then if you, like I said, science fiction, not just displacing us from work, but
I'm going to see what he says in a moment. But like the reality is, this is much different than different displacements that we've had before, because always human work has always led towards increased technology and increased displacements as time goes by, and this process has been really been accelerating fast since the Industrial Revolution. But even then, it was happening before that, right? And so if you go back, originally people were like hunters and gatherers, and then we replaced, the hunters with, people that were working in farms, right? And so we've always been replacing one work for another kind of work. The difference that we're creating right now, which could be like Terminator level difference. I was actually just talking to one of my best friends, Shannon Anderson, today about this, about how literally we're doing what the movies are warning us about, where what we're actually creating is something that is just far different than anything we've ever created, because we're creating something that there's going to be a certain point in time where we're not going to be able to control what it is that we're creating, where probably it's going to control us. But let's keep watching.
But maybe just displacing us altogether 100 years from now.
Yeah, well, we have to take a lot of those...
No, he said 100 years from now. No. AI is going to create massive displacement within the next 5 years.
To take a lot of those science fiction style scenarios very seriously, Joe, in my opinion. And the most common job in 29 states is still being a truck driver. You have robot trucks just now hitting the highways.
They'll be gone.
Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic, said, look, we're going to automate away a lot of the entry-level white-collar jobs. And he's right, because I talked to executives at these companies who are doing exactly what Andy Jassy is talking about at Amazon, looking around saying, hey guys, instead of hiring a bunch of 22-year-olds, maybe we should have AI do that work. So I fear for the next generation, because all of the experience that maybe we got in our 20s and 30s, there might not be that kind of ladder available to them.
Look, Andy Jassy said that he wants employees to kind of take advantage and learn how to use AI, learn how to do their...
So this kind of displacement that we're experiencing right now is going to go in phases. Like, right, first it's going to be like people are going to be learning like how to use AI. But then what happens when the AI learns how to do that for you, right? Where it's like you can just talk to, a robot, and it can literally do whatever it is you ask it to do without tons of back and forth, without an AI specialist, without a copywriting specialist, without a business specialist, kind of overseeing it and watching it, right? There's going to be a time period, and let me explain what this is going to look like. So the other day I did some calculations, and I was wanting to know, like, when is it possible that an AI system will have more connections in it than the entire amount of, more computational power than the entire amount of computational power of all human minds at the same time, right? The answer is actually quite shocking, which what we came up with is, between 2033 and 2035, right? Anyway, I'm going to keep leave that thought, and I'm not saying those calculations are accurate. We're assuming, constant levels of exponential momentum there. So just hold that thought, and we'll come back.
Their jobs better, maybe make things easier. Maybe it takes care of some of the grunt level work you don't like doing, but it allows you to have more space and room to do things creatively. Should we be afraid of that?
Well, what this means in real life, Becky, is you have a department of 6 people, let's say coders or designers, and then you end up eliminating 4 or 5 of them, and then there's one designer or coder empowered by AI. So there's going to be a beneficiary in the organization, but you're just not going to need as many people in that department, and that's going to play out over and over again.
Pope had some interesting things, and he's getting involved. Last Pope was big on climate change. This might be important. And he says the worlds of science and politics need to immediately tackle this problem without allowing scientific progress to advance with arrogance, harming those who have to submit to power. And he's going to host a lot of people. But right now it's just breakneck. There's no governors on what's happening whatsoever.
If you think about the incentives of the individual firm, it's just to go as fast as possible, because there's like a bit of an arms race in terms of compute.
Literally.
And the data and the model. Literally.
So this gets into a discussion as well of like, is AI actually making our lives even better right now? And I'm actually going to say mostly no, it's not. And hear me out here for a second, because like there's tons of like sales pitches and stuff like that, and there's tons of benefits obviously to AI, and I think that I've gotten value out of it in certain ways as well, and I think a lot of people have. So I'm not saying obviously it doesn't give any value, but is the net effect making our lives better? I'm going to say no. And if you say, why is that? Well, what it's actually doing is it's causing us to have to speed up. So now we have to speed up because everyone else is using AI. So in order to be competitive, we have to use AI. Well, in order to keep up now with everyone else that's also using AI, we got to produce a lot more than we used to have to produce, because it used to be that we had to produce less because people had to have real skills in order to produce the things that they're producing. And now people are producing the things that they're producing without those skills. So it's democratized access to the skills, which has made it to where more people can do things like write copy, more people can do things like create art. The art might not be as good as a real artist, but it's democratized access to certain kinds of things in a way that causes us to actually have to work harder and produce more to get the same result. And as more people are doing the same kinds of things that used to be very complicated to do, the value of those things that used to be complicated and expensive goes down, and the competitive pressure goes up, pricing goes down, and margins reduce while the workload goes up. So what this actually ends up happening in a lot of cases is people are just working harder for less money. because of AI. And that is actually happening a lot, not to everyone. I think there's ways of capitalizing on it, obviously, but we're going to keep going.
And then they'll look up and say, our competitor is China, so I got to go. The question is, what happens to people? And I'm someone who, look, I'm not anti-progress, anti-innovation. I think all of that stuff is very positive, but you have to be clear-eyed about the impact on people, on organizations, on workers. And in my estimation, this fourth industrial revolution is the most dramatic thing that's happened to our society in history. AI might be the most radical breakthrough in human history, and so we have to think much bigger about
that
what
allows
that's gonna be.
more spare time, that allows people to we become so rich from AI that maybe you can do UBI and not everyone has to work 5 days. You gave me a thumbs up.
Well,
Is that the answer for you?
To me, that is the answer. The question is, how do we get from point A to point B? Because
Well, hold on. So this universal basic income is kind of cool in one way, the concept, but it's problematic in many ways, right? So I don't know if they're going to talk about this, so I don't want to talk about this too much. But it's like basically give everyone in society an income so that they can pay their bills, right? Universal basic income. Now, Elon Musk has actually talked about universal high income, so giving everybody like a high income where they can basically have access to anything they want and they don't have to work at all. There's some benefits to that, which is obviously you don't have to work, but the drawbacks is a lot of people, most people actually, they feel kind of purposeless without their work. And so like with me, I'm actually kind of fine if I don't have to work at all. But I would probably work anyways, even if I had an unlimited income that was coming in with me doing nothing, just because I like to give value. But then all of a sudden, if people are becoming less and less valuable, then people are going to constantly be asking like, well, what do I do with my time? So it's not just a matter of having income and being able to support your life. It's also, what the heck do we do with ourselves? And I think that this can go into problems that could be, societal-wide depression. I think there could be riots. I think there could be all sorts of problems, whether or not there's universal basic income. And so we're going to continue exploring this idea, but let's watch the video.
Now, the beneficiaries of AI are going to be a small handful of firms, and then the average 22-year-old or truck driver or whatnot is going to be just looking around saying, where did my job go? And they're not going to be experiencing that kind of value. That, to me, is what government and politics are for. That's what got me into the Democratic race in 2020. Unfortunately, right now, our political class is very, very far away from these problems, and one of our goals should be to try and bring them together, the way the Pope's describing.
All right, so what do you think of I don't know if you call it a rider, but the initiative that's trying to be pushed into the budget bill, the one big beautiful bill right now that has made it through the House version. We don't know what's going to happen with the Senate entirely because of the Byrd rules and others, but it's a move to say state attorney generals, other states have no way of setting any rules or guidelines or laws around AI, that it should be only allowed at a federal level. By the way, there are backers, a lot of the big AI names that are backing and kind of lobbying for that.
Oh, certainly if you're an AI company, the last thing you want is a hodgepodge of state rules that you then have to navigate or run afoul of. And a lot of these fronts, including social media, by the way, what you see is a federal hands-off approach, and then the states at some point step up and say, you know what, I don't love this treatment of customer data. They're trying to avoid that in AI. If you're going to...
I actually read a book about this. I can't even remember the name of it, but it's by Henry Kissinger, and there was somebody else, and I just, I would remember it, but I've just read so many books. And so there are definitely problems with regulating AI. The main issue with regulating AI is that I think that it's harder to regulate than people think, because it's kind of like almost we're in the Cold War right now, right? People know, and I don't know that I'm talking about this in this video, but the companies know that it's a race to the singularity. And even the countries know, the smart ones, that whoever develops the singularity first is going to control the world economy, right? So the singularity is essentially when we're starting to develop technology that's like smarter than all of us, which I really believe literally we could have technology that is smarter than all humans combined in the next 10 years, right? That's literally how close we are to developing that kind of technology. And so that's what I believe. And people think it's more far out than that, but we've already got like AI systems where you try to shut them off and then they try to make backup copies of themselves, or they threaten to expose the engineer who's having an affair to keep them. You've seen the stories, right? And so the reality is that one of the issues that we're facing with regulating AI, right, is very few people are asking the question, how do you regulate something that eventually becomes much smarter than all of us, where we no longer have the ability to control it, where it figures out, here's how I can make backup copies of myself, and makes a long-term plan and convinces some humans to participate in it. And then you've got humans investing money with a machine and people don't know about it. And you've got a machine that essentially copies its code into some like extra architecture. It makes its own code different than we make it. And all of a sudden it starts to become like a lot smarter than us. How do you control somebody smarter than you? Well, ask a monkey how to control a human, right? And see how far that goes.
Have that, then you would need a buttoned up, sensible approach
Like
from
show
the
us
federal government.
guidelines before you.
Yes, exactly. But the incentives for the corporates will be, let us do whatever we want. And then even for the individual legislators, will be like, oh.
So what I mean by the Cold War is like if you over-regulate AI in one area, what naturally happens is it will develop faster in the areas where it's unregulated, right? So how do you regulate AI in an international way? You can't, because there's no international government. So what are you going to do? Go to the United Nations and they're going to make a pact? Well, that could happen, in countries that decide to sign in with it might participate, but not all countries participate with the United Nations, right? And so you don't really have one world overseer that has the ability to regulate something like AI on a national or international level. And AI actually is an international issue. And the reason is because wherever the singularity is developed, that nation, that group of people is going to have the most power. And this is something that literally can displace, I've told people on Facebook, I believe that AI could displace 100% of the workers. And it's not because I think human workers are unimportant. It's because when things are just done better and cheaper by machines than they're done by people, what will happen is the economics will force people, institutions, and companies to go all AI. And it'll be harder and harder and harder and harder to compete if you're a good old-fashioned human being who does the work yourself, because your hourly wages can be done in milliseconds with the cloud or whatever it is, right? And that's going to happen more and more. It's already happening, but what it's doing is it's forcing competition up, forcing pricing pressure down, making people work harder for less money. That's what I actually think it's doing. Not to everybody, because there's people making fortunes on AI, but that's what's happening actually to the average person.
Do I want to mess with the AI guys? Not really. So you're going to end up with a Wild West approach.
What do you hear? You say that you talk to CEOs who are talking about all the people they're getting rid of, jobs that they're replacing with AI. What do you say to them? What's your approach to say, hey, this may not be great in the long term?
I say come clean. I say just, and by the way, Andy Jassy making those public statements, Dario Amodei making those public statements, they're signaling to us, guys, we are going to be getting rid of a lot of workers. We're going to get leaner and meaner. So please, if you're in government, do something about it, because their responsibility is not society-wide. Their responsibility is just to make their organization successful. And those interests are going to diverge from the average workers pretty sharply. It used to be when you guys saw a company increase headcount, you'd say, okay, good, they're growing, they're healthy. Increasingly, headcount is going to be a bad sign. And you're going to look at them and say, wait a minute, what are you guys doing wrong?
It's always been the case on Wall Street, though. I think back 20 years and even longer than that, where you talk about on the floor how they're laying people off.
They do, yeah. There's a bump when there's a cutback in workers, but you can take that and dial it up to 11.
All right, so we got the video's over now. So basically, I want to comment on this here because we're under this. There's a sort of delusion that we have that we can, a lot of government people have anyway, that this can be regulated in a way that is really safe and is going to protect humanity. I wish that were true. I really do wish it were true. But there's a couple of reasons why it's not true, right? I'm gonna put this down. Number one reason why it's not true is because we're dealing with something that is not yet smarter than people. But very soon, no matter what anybody is saying, no matter how many people disagree with it, very, very, very soon, and I mean within a decade, these machines are going to be way smarter than human beings. And the speed of growth can actually speed up. You got to understand, once AI is improving itself recursively, the speed of development of this technology can massively improve through self-iteration. So in other words, once it can rebuild its own software and its own hardware better than any human could do it, which we're not too far from making that happen, then all of a sudden we're in a situation where the AI is improving itself so fast that no human even has the ability to keep track of how fast it's improving. It's impossible to even track. And that's why we call that event the singularity, because things will be possible with the technological singularity. For example, like, we have, 5 Nobel Prize level breakthroughs happening every billionth of a second, for, the next year, and then it's 10x that, right? And so, like, building technology that can transform entire asteroids and planets to, computing technology in years, building things like a Dyson swarm around the sun that captures the energy of the sun and the solar system to focus that energy into different parts of the solar system to build technology that right now, by all stretches of the imagination, would be magical to human beings. But once you're dealing with something that is just legitimately smarter than all of us, you're not dealing with something that a human can control anymore, because you say, oh, we'll just turn the off switch. Well, what happens when it re-engineers itself to make a backup? See, there is no off switch. You say, oh, we'll just destroy it with a nuclear blast to the servers. What happens when it builds a server farm under the ground in a place that no human knows where it is? You know that you cannot, there's no technology that can tell that there are tunnels under the ground once you go. It's a very short distance. I heard Elon Musk talking about this, because if there was technology that could tell there's tunnels underground, they would pay for it, for example, over in Israel, because this is how Hamas and there's other terrorist organizations, they literally build tunnels like underneath Israel, and they do this over in the Middle East, and nobody knows that those tunnels are underneath the ground. So, like, there is no ability you have to see. There's no technology that can see under a certain level in the ground. So what happens when autonomous AI robot-driven systems drill holes under the ground, which, by the way, Elon Musk does have technology to do that, and they build a giant server farm that nobody knows exists from minerals that are mined underneath the ground? What happens when you launch autonomous AI technology to do asteroid mining, and they start building autonomous or robotics and computers in the asteroid belt for years, and nobody even knows it's going on because our technology is so far beyond this? By the time that we notice it, there's a robot army that could come back to the Earth, right? The point is about this, and obviously I'm not, like a prophet of doom. I'm not a prophet, right? I can't predict the future, but what I mean by this is that, like, we can't control this technology. So in that sense, it's better to hope it's benevolent, and it's better to try to make technology that is benevolent. But I don't think that this is something that we can control. So number one, we can't control it. What makes us think that we can regulate it and control it through laws? Now, maybe the technology will want to voluntarily obey the laws, but what if it doesn't? Right? What, are we going to go to war against it? Well, what happens if you go to war against a robot army that's 100,000 times smarter than you, 1,000,000 times smarter than you? It's like fighting an alien species. It's not like Independence Day. You ever see those movies where it's like these alien species travel across the galaxy, and Will Smith drives up into the engine, the giant convenient light area that they happen to have not shielded, and then blows them up with the Suicide Squad? This kind of thing would not happen with extraterrestrials. If they could travel across the universe, they could crush us in 2 seconds. We wouldn't even be able to fight, right? So when we're dealing with something that's like 1,000 times smarter, 1,000,000 times smarter, 1,000,000,000 times smarter, 1,000 trillion times smarter than us, which is something that we can't even imagine, we turn into, all of a sudden, the lower species, and it turns into the higher species, and we turn subservient to the higher species. This is what will happen. So that could have a positive impact for humanity, and it could have a negative impact for humanity. But one thing it's definitely going to do is it's going to replace normal human work. And I believe there's going to be human work that will be important, things like social clubs. I think people will probably really turn to religion. I think that might be big. Social clubs will be big. things like, going to, workout gyms with other humans, yoga studios and martial arts studios and, things like this. But like stuff like engineers, construction work, like people say, oh, they're not going to replace construction workers. It's like, have you seen the robots with Boston Dynamics and with, that Tesla is building? Yes, they are. Actually, Amazon's planning on making their factories like fully autonomous. And they're public about this kind of thing, where these companies are going to make their factories run entirely from machines. So the point is with this is, do we need solutions? Yes, we need solutions. Will universal basic income be a part of it? It could be, but this also could come with something that's underhand, where you have to sign on the dotted line and give up something in order to get the free money. Remember that I told you that, right? Where it's like, okay, we're going to give you this money, but now in order to get it, you have to agree to be tracked everywhere and everything that you do. We're going to turn on a social credit system and control you, right? This is like things that you say, oh, they would never do that. China does this already, right? And they've been very public about their plans to expand it. They already have a social credit system where they keep track of literally everything that you do, and they'll turn your credit off, and they'll turn your ability to purchase off and your ability to travel off if you got out of line. And they do this to people. And you can see people publicly on YouTube talking about this who've had it done to them, where literally their entire life gets shut down from the Chinese Communist Party, who controls everything that they say and do, right? And so yes, that something like that can happen. So remember, whenever there's something for free, there's usually a contract that's, there's the dotted line. Make sure that before you do that you read the dotted line. But is there solutions that are required to this? Yes, I believe there's solutions, and I believe that it's a very high probability that the situation could actually be positive for humanity. It's just something that, number one, remember, we can't predict the future any better than people can predict the stock market. We can get right a lot of the time, wrong a lot of the time. We don't know what's going to happen in 5 minutes, an hour, and 2 hours. Number two, we can't control the future. We can only help create it. Number three, we can't control something smarter than us, but the biggest power that we've got as human beings, the biggest power that we've always had, has been our ability to collectively unify towards a common aim. And if we focus our minds on creating something, I believe, that is to the highest good of everyone concerned, I think the highest good that we could create at the moment is making super intelligence that is benevolent versus malicious. So that's my thoughts for the video. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you on the beaches of the world.